Hi, and welcome everyone to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Hello, everyone. I thought I was muted there for a second. How is everyone doing today? I hope you are all having a wonderful Thursday. And again, thank you for joining us and welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And as you just heard, we're broadcasting live on the blessed and wonderful United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which of course is all over social media, available on FM radio, as you just heard in the intro. So I'm pretty excited to talk about this topic. It's not something that I think a lot of people discuss openly, but it's so important. And we're going to be opening a door that many people sense is there, but rarely feel invited to walk through. It's a conversation where sexuality is not just reduced to biology, and spirituality is not divorced from the body, and intimacy is understood as a bridge between human consciousness and the wider cosmos. For centuries, desire has been treated as something to control, suppress, or sensationalize. Yet across ancient traditions and emerging experiences, sexual energy has also been described as creative, sacred, and profoundly transformative. And I think that pretty much sums it up. And today in this conversation, we're joined by an author and a researcher, Aubrey. I hope I don't kill her name. I should have asked her how to pronounce it. I think it's Houdeshell. She'll correct us when she pops in. And her work explores these ideas with courage, depth, and curiosity, challenging cultural taboos while inviting a more expansive and understanding of intimacy. Her writing asks whether sexual energy is a not only personal or relational, but cosmic. I mean, think about that. I bet you haven't thought about that, or maybe you have. So let's stop the jibber jabber and welcome her on board. Aubrey, such a blessing to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. And I'm excited that you spend a long time on these episodes so we can really dive in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. You're going to hear me say hello to my tribe of people that pop in. So excuse me when I do that. And Carrie, hello, blessings. Always a pleasure. Heidi, my star sister, love you dearly. And of course, she says hello to you. And we'll get a bunch of people popping in as well. So what I want to do is hear more about your background, how you got started, what your roots were, and what prompted you to write this book. And of course, I have a PDF version, so I can't hold it up, but you can hold up your book. And I read it and loved it. I love the charts in there. Look at that cover. Isn't that stunning? Stellar sex.
That's it.
Now, it's funny because a lot of folks, I think, are going to be comfortable. It's not like we're going to be X-rated. It's all PG stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all beautifully connected from reading it, like to the cosmos. And I absolutely love that. So take it away. Talk about yourself.
Okay. Well, hello, my name is Aubrey Houdeshell. I am from Denver. I've lived in Colorado my entire life. I've been in the Denver metro area since I was 8 years old. I love it here in Colorado. It's beautiful. Oh, hey, Boulder. That's one of my favorite places. Oh, I love that so much. Boulder is the other place that I would move to if I wasn't in Denver. So I am an astrologer. I'm also a tarot reader and an author. I've had the privilege of being able to publish a few things. Stellar Sex is just my latest one. And it is the whole premise, I should say, of this book is basically based off of the experience that I had over the years of doing this professionally and meeting with all kinds of people who have all kinds of sexuality, gender expression, relationship styles. And over time, I realized, we can really see kind of like our own romantic styles, certainly, but also our sexual and erotic style contained within our birth chart. And so it's just basically an approach to astrology and the entire chart that I kind of developed over time from meeting with people. And I decided to put it in a book.
Wonderful. So this book is already out for purchase, correct?
Yeah. So it came out in early July, actually, of last year. So it's been out
Oh,
for a little
wonderful.
while. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry.
No, I said wonderful. That's good. And of course, let me get your banner up here. I know you said that Instagram is your most connected account, like that you want folks to reach you out at. Where can they purchase your book?
Okay, so you can purchase your book straight from the Llewellyn website. That is who published the book. But it's also on all the kind of like big box websites, right? So you can buy it from Barnes and Noble, you can buy it from Amazon, you can buy it from Books A Million. And then there are various little local shops kind of around the country that carry it as well. There is a place in New Orleans, which I noticed you mentioned at the beginning, at Sassy Magic. And then, there are several places here in the Denver metro area that carry it as well.
Okay, great. And the name of the book is Stellar, Stellar, Sex, Unlock Your Sexual Power with Erotic Astrology. So make sure you guys Google that. You can find it on Amazon. That's where I happen to see it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your background like? Did you experience like a lot? And I love asking folks this because sometimes I'm always so surprised by the answer. Did you experience like a lot of paranormal activity in your life? Like what connected you to high strangeness?
So I will say I've always been a person who has been fascinated with everything that kind of helps us to know ourselves, right? Like astrology, obviously being the one that I really clung to. But I also have done like the Myers-Briggs and the human design and like, all of the Enneagram. Like I knew all of those things about myself from a very young age. Obviously, I have had some experience with the spirits. I do have, the psychic medium part of me that definitely has people and spirits come through all the time. But I would say I didn't have my first like real experience with anything kind of spooky or otherworldly until I was 21.
Oh,
And it was a presence in my apartment that I was living in. It was not a friendly presence.
oh
Um,
no.
yeah. And I mean, I remember so vividly, I was asleep having a nap like in the middle of the day, and I've always been a vivid dreamer. Okay, I will say that, like, I have extremely vivid dreams, and I dreamt about like being attacked in
Oh,
my dream, by some kind of entity. And after that, all of these really crazy, weird things started happening in
oh,
that apartment. And at the time, I didn't know anything about anything as far as like the paranormal or the spiritual was really concerned. But luckily I had a friend who did. And so I had to invite him over to, clear my apartment for me. And it worked, luckily. But I
oh,
moved out,
you got lucky.
just a few months after that. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you got lucky that he was able to clear it on the
Oh,
first run. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it was interesting because he brought one of our mutual friends over as well, who's kind of into all that stuff. And they both had to like work together to clear it. And then he told me, after that the entity had attached itself to him and that he brought it
Oh,
home with him. And it took him a
oh,
while to be able to kind of like clear that away. So,
yeah, that's like the
mm,
worst case scenario.
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard of that happening before. Well, the good news is you got it out of your world, and
Yeah.
not that you wanted to dump it in his world,
Definitely
but
not.
yeah, definitely not. So your background, and this was new to me and fascinated me, and that's why I really was excited to talk to you. Your background's in sextrology and astrocartography.
That's exactly right.
All right, you're gonna have to break those down.
Okay, so sextrology, I mean, that is what stellar sex is, right? It's the intersection of sex and astrology. I kind of use the term sextrology and erotic astrology interchangeably, right? They're kind of pointing to the same thing. So, it is about how you can begin to understand yourself, right? Your wants, needs, and desires, how you express those things. We can also look at like kinks, turn-ons, turns off, things like that within erotic astrology. But like I said, I kind of look at the entire birth chart, right? So normally I think when people are exploring like compatibility or any kind of like sextrology, they tend to think only of like Venus and Mars, which are the partnership planets, which is
Yeah.
definitely a great place to start, right? Definitely a great place to start. You can learn a lot about yourself just from those two. But as I have kind of developed this over time, I've learned like, no, every single point and placement, just like in do a regular astrology consultation, they all play a role in our kind of expressions and desires. And then astrocartography is something entirely different. So it essentially, what it does is it takes your birth chart and it translates them into longitude and latitude lines and projects them up onto the globe or the world map, however you want to think about it. And the idea is that when we can visit these different locations around the world where we have these lines, it activates a different part of your life and, a different part of your chart. And that sort of means and does various different things and kind of influences, which areas of your life are boosted or not. And you can use that to do all kinds of things, including starting a business, needing a partner, right? Buying a home, things like that. So, yeah.
I never heard of that before. Is this a new and evolving like bridge of astrology, or has this always existed?
So, astro mapping has existed in various forms for centuries. Like the earliest version of astro mapping that they found goes all the way back to ancient Greece and like Hellenistic astrology, right?
Wow.
Though certainly the Greeks weren't the only ones that were doing it. But it's kind of developed over time. And the term astrocartography that we all kind of use, it's a very popularized term, that was coined back in the 80s by an astrologer named Jim Lewis. And he kind of took the current version of locational astrology or astro mapping. And he sort of developed, his own techniques and expanded upon that and literally coined, like I said, the term astrocartography. And for a while when he was alive, there was like a school and a certification that you could do. That term was actually trademarked by him for a while. It's not anymore, which is why we all use it rampantly on social media without consequence now. To answer your question, like it has been around in various versions for a long time, but what we think of today when we're thinking about astrocartography, most people are thinking about Jim Lewis and what he developed.
Oh, and that was back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is that like a ley line thing? Like, do they use ley lines and star maps, or like what? How do you? I'm so curious about it.
So I no to the ley lines. Okay. It's all just like anything else in astrology, it's all based off of our own individual chart, right? So like my astro map is going to look different from your astro map because we have different charts, right? And
Right.
that's true of everybody. However, there is something known as the geodetic map, which projects the zodiac signs across the globe. And that is a sort of a different version of astrocartography that a lot of astrologers will use when referencing events that are happening wherever, right? Not just recently, I saw somebody who was referencing the geodetic map and how it was being activated when ICE went to LA,
Oh.
for example.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not the same thing as ley lines, but like similar thoughts in a way, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
these special locations that have different energies and activations.
Well, that
But it's
makes
much,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really does make a lot of sense. And you do these readings for folks.
Yeah.
I guess it's a service that you offer.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so interesting. And sextrology is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's sex through the lens, I guess, of astrology, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Oh, go
okay,
ahead.
so no, I was going to ask you. So, you mention in your book that it unravels one's sexual and romantic natures, right? So, when you do a reading, because when I've had readings done, astrological readings, they
Mhm.
never brought up that topic. I mean, they would bring up things like your partner, your mate, but it never really got to that depth before.
Mm.
So, how do you do that? Do you do a typical reading, and then is there a certain key, like are there certain key indicators that you look for, like to make sure that you're sexually connected to another person, or who to avoid, or what type of person to look for, or things like that?
Yeah, so there's all kinds of different topics, obviously, that come up, and people will come get the erotic astrology readings for various different reasons. Some people are there simply because they want to understand themselves, right? And like,
Mm,
how is this kind of showing up? What do I really want? What do I really need? How do I get it?
yeah,
And I'm like approaching being in a relationship. If people want to know about compatibility, obviously, then we're looking into synastry, right? And like composite charts and how people's planets, kind of lay on top of each other and how they activate each other's charts. Um, but the focus of the book, which I would say is by and large the focus of my practice as far as sextrology is concerned, it is more about like the self, right? And learning to understand those parts of yourself first, right? And how to sort of be honest and therefore empower yourself, right, in those areas. So then you can start to show up sort of more honestly and more authentically in your connections with other people. And ideally, through having that kind of clarity around what you really want and need, we are starting to have more fulfilling connections with people as well, because we're able to kind of ask directly for what it is that we need. So if somebody is coming for just like an individual reading, of course, I am going to look at where is Venus, where is Mars, what are
right.
they kind of doing? How are they interacting? Um, I think the moon is also an important planet to focus on because that's our emotional needs, right? It's
Sure.
how we receive the feelings of like nurturing and safety, which is a
Uh-huh.
fundamental part of relationships. Well, more serious ones, obviously, if it's just a situationship or hookup, like you probably don't care, right? But most people want to know for like the long term when they're coming to get a reading. There's also the asteroid Eros, which is literally our kind of like erotic, what we find irresistible as far as like our physical sexual expressions are concerned. And so, those, because the readings are an hour, right? So like those are definitely the points I start with. And depending on how the conversation unfolds and how much time we have, then obviously I'll dive into other things. But I think focusing on kind of like those 4 placements in the beginning really helps people to get that kind of foundation around like, okay, this is
Mm.
me.
Well, I know that we all contain a duality, feminine, masculine.
Sure.
Um, every human on the planet, even animals, right? Every living, I guess, creature. Do you find that most of your clients or some of your clients are just confused about their own sexuality, and maybe by having a reading done that would clear things up for them or help them discover who they really are?
No, I don't think that people are confused. Sometimes depending on the aspects and the way that the chart is laid out, there can feel like this kind of push and pull inside of themselves where there's a part of them that wants X, Y, and Z, and then this other part of
Right.
them that wants like A, B, C. And it's about figuring out how to kind of bring those things together to coexist in harmony. right? And to try to figure out how can they own both sides of themselves and kind of approach their connections with other people in a more honest way. But everybody that I read for is an adult, right? And so by and large, most of the people that are coming to see me, I mean, they've had sex, right? And they've been in relationships. And so
Right.
they're not, they're not green, right? In that sense. So yeah, I think usually it just ends up being more about interpreting these parts of themselves that maybe they don't feel as in touch with, right? Or that, again, maybe it feels like that push and pull and they're like, I don't know how to navigate that and to explain that to my partners or anything like that. So that's usually kind of more what I'm helping them with.
Yeah. So, like, what personal experiences or questions like first pushed you to explore sexuality through a cosmic or a spiritual lens? Because, like I said, I've never run into anyone else that does that.
Hmm. Well, as we discussed prior to jumping on here, I am a triple Libra. And so Venus, the planet of love, beauty, romance, and we do see a little bit of sex, is my chart ruler, right? Like Venus rules over so much of my chart. And my Venus is in Scorpio. So there is a strong sexual element to that placement. And I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about relationships and sex and all of those things, but also just as any reader can attest, the two main things that people always want to know about in readings are love and money. Right. So I spend, I just all the time I'm talking, people want to know, when am I going to meet somebody? When is it going to happen for me? What do I need to be doing? And so it just kind of I was just naturally led really down that path, through talking to people, and, I am not somebody who has ever been scandalized by the idea of sex. Even from my teenage years, I was always a pretty sexually confident person. And so where other people may shy away from that topic, it's just not something I ever did. And, Scorpio ruling over the genitals, right? When in astrology, I mean, I've always I can't tell you how many documentaries I've watched about sex workers and how much true crime I've watched and things like that. So it's just something that's always been of interest to me, right? Like we're all sexual creatures. We all have that kind of erotic, creative nature within us. And it shows up in varying shades and degrees and all of that. And I think that's actually beautiful, and something to be celebrated. And so that's definitely something that, that's like my goal, right? When I'm meeting with people, is just helping them to understand their kind of natural state around those things. And yes, people of all ages still find it to be an uncomfortable topic, but I think it really does a disservice to people, right? Like sex is often one of those kind of open secrets, right? Where nobody's talking about it, but everybody's having it, if you will. And I just think kind of keeping that stuff in the dark, we're not helping anybody by doing that.
Right. This is so true. Let's see. Hillbilly Herb, I love his name. How are you, sweetie? He said, I have a 0-degree Venus in Scorpio. I was told that major things on 0 degrees are tricky.
Okay, I love this question. So there are 2 degrees in astrology known as the anaretic degrees. So it's 0 degrees of a sign and 29 degrees of a sign. So the very beginning and the very end. Yes, the sort of approach to this is that those degrees hold extra karmic weight, but the way that they manifest is very different, right? And I would argue that 0 degrees, I personally view that as being easier than planets at 29 degrees, right? So the idea in this case with Venus in Scorpio at 0 degrees is that the energy of that placement, that planet and that sign, are showing up in their purest, rawest, most unbridled form. Because the idea is that, you haven't spent any like time as a soul, right? Kind of going through the journey of Venus in Scorpio. There hasn't been any like lessons, trials, tribulations up until this point. It's probably not true now, but like, when you came into this life, that wasn't true. So yes, there's, kind of bigger lessons that you're learning with that in this lifetime. But like I said, I think it is easier than having a 29-degree Scorpio Venus. And I'm biased because that's my own placement, but I'm like, hell yeah, it's like a super powerful Venus to have is a 0-degree Scorpio.
Oh, nice. Well, you'll learn something. And of course, he said, thank you very much. If anybody else has any questions for Aubrey, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to answer them. So
Absolutely.
what was the moment that you realized in your life, okay, this book, it needs to exist to the public rather than remain, like a private inquiry? Like when did you say, okay, I'm being called to write a book about this? And are there a lot of other competing authors in this genre?
So to your point, I sort of saw a hole in the market around this topic. There is a book that was published, oh gosh, I think it was back in the 70s. I can't remember
Oh,
exactly when it was
wow.
published, but it's literally called Sextrology, right? And it was written by a couple. Actually, I believe they are husband and wife. And the book focuses only on sun signs. Right. And they divide it into the gender binary, right? So we've got men and women. So the entire book, and this is no shade to them. Like there's a lot of good information in that book. I've read it. I own it. Totally. Right. But it literally will divide it into like Aries man, Aries woman,
Yeah.
Taurus man, Taurus woman. Right. And that their approach that they took to that, which I think also makes sense, when we have the context around kind of like the time that it was written, I think that makes sense. And then they also divide it into like straight man, gay man, right? Straight woman, gay
Oh,
woman. And so from my view, I felt like, here in the 2020s, that approach is a little dated, right? And isn't keeping up with the reality of what it means to like be a person with all kinds of like gender and sexual expressions. And I really value inclusivity in my work. And I wrote the Stellar Sex very intentionally, right? With inclusive language. Nothing is gendered. And I also do not subscribe to the idea that like, oh, if you're a man, then you're going to express this way versus if you're a woman you're going to express this way, or any you're non-binary, whatever, right? Like I don't believe in that in my own practice. I was like, no matter who you are, no matter what your gender is, no matter what your sexuality is, like if you're a Libra, you're a Libra, right? I'm like, you're going to possess those traits. And so that was part of my motivation, right? I was like, no, we need like a more modernized kind of approach to this. We definitely need a more inclusive approach to this. And also, I didn't write the book through the lens of assuming that everybody is in, a monogamous relationship, because a lot of people aren't, you know what I mean? And so I just wanted it to be a book that anybody could pick up, right? No matter where you are in your life around like relationships, if you're wanting to get married, if you're never wanting to get married, if you're polyamorous, if you're whatever, right? Like I just wanted it to be something that everybody could benefit from, if that makes sense. And so again, that was kind of like, I just very clearly saw that kind of hole and the need for something like that. And then, through all of my work, I'm constantly posting online. I discussed, a lot of what I was seeing and thinking and how I was interpreting things. And I would always get really good responses from people on it. And they were just like, wow, this is so great. Nobody else is talking about this. And so it just kind of clicked for me at a certain point after a little while of putting that work out there and getting people who were interested in it. I was like, okay, it just needs to be a book. Like it just needs to be a book. And so, luckily, Amy at Llewellyn instantly kind of saw and understood this book and what I wanted it to be. And and it happened. So, I'm very pleased about it.
Yeah, they're great. I love Llewellyn. They're such
Yes.
great people over there. Yeah, it's funny because I think the problem with sexuality as a whole, just based on my observations of what I've witnessed in my lifetime, like
Mhm.
back in the 60s, I mean, I was a baby, but the zeitgeist of the era was free love and like Woodstock,
Yeah.
and nobody cared. Nobody, when I tell you,
Yeah.
no, no, only like there was a very small percentage of people that thought, they were like prudish and they thought, oh
Mhm.
goodness, it's horrible. Most of the people back then were into that, like, expressions of love and freedom and autonomy and the whole thing. And as time evolved to like now,
Mhm.
all of a sudden we were thrusted a whole new vocabulary to try to understand sexuality.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like I heard somebody say they were two spirited. I think that's mentioned in the string of LBGQT, whatever it's called, LBGQ. And they mention this two spirited sexuality thing, and people are lost. They don't understand what all this means. Like, because again, it was you were either straight or gay
Mhm.
or trans. There were
Mhm.
really no, now there's 101 topics to describe a person's sexuality. Why do you think that? Do you think this is just like a phase of humanity that we're going through? And that once we get over the hurdle of struggling through this, it will be just like normalized?
Oh, well, yes, I do think it will all be normalized at a certain point. I mean, for me, it's like we're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube. You know what I
Right.
mean? As far as the two-spirited thing is concerned, the only time I have ever heard that is in reference to Native American cultures, and that's how they would refer to transgender people, from my understanding. That's the only
Mhm.
time I've ever heard that.
That makes
Um,
sense.
but I think language, I love that you're asking this question because educationally my background is in linguistics. So language is a very important tool, right? And language matters. And in today's modern age, all languages are evolving all the time. Okay, language
Yes.
is not a static thing, it is a living, breathing thing that evolves alongside us, right? And so it's very normal in, I don't care what language you're talking about, for new vocabulary to emerge, right?
Absolutely.
And over time, as different gender and sexual expressions have become more and more accepted, right? People are less afraid to kind of like come
Right.
out and, be themselves. We have had this language, right? That's kind of developed alongside of it. And language, it is power, right? When we have a word to describe our experience, I think that is one of the most empowering things that can ever happen to us, right? Whether we're talking about
Agreed.
gender and sexuality or not, right? Like just having that word or that phrase to really name what it is that we're experiencing, people are absolutely going to cling to that, right? And to run with that. And so that's why you're right. The sort of alphabet soup, gets more letters added onto it all the time. It's like the LGBTQIA plus, right, community at
Oh,
this point.
yeah.
And I understand that people are resistant, right, to things like that. However, I also think to assume that this is like the first time in history where there's been like bisexual people, right? Or there's been like the first time in history where, maybe somebody felt like they didn't fit into the gender binary. I just don't think that's true, right? It's just that we happen to have more words for it.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, look back at ancient Greece and Rome. You got Caligula, whatever his name was. He
Caligula,
was like
yeah.
the biggest degenerate on the planet. So sexuality, dates, it's biblical. I mean,
Right.
honestly, it's just very biblical. But yeah, I just think it's confusing for folks because now with social media, people always want to express themselves and be understood. And
Hmm.
I think that in doing that, that kind of hurt the the whole alphabet soup thing. Because like when I was growing up, like I said, nobody cared what race you were, what gender. I mean, nobody really. It wasn't a thing. Like nobody
Hmm.
really. And now with social media, I think it's kind of done a little bit more harm than good to the LGBTQ community. I think.
I'm so curious about that because I feel the exact opposite way, right? Like I think, the as with all things, the pendulum kind of swings to one end and then it swings back to the other end and then we're swinging, like, you know what I mean? And it's like over time, those things we kind of arrive in the middle, right? And things become normalized, accepted, whatever. I mean, there will be a point in human history where like people won't even think about like, oh, there's all these different genders and sexual expressions and whatever. But I don't know. Sometimes people are resistant to new things, and I can definitely appreciate that, especially if it challenges, kind of like our worldview or our truth and what it is that we're used to. But yeah, like social media. Yeah, it's like I mean, social media is a precarious topic. Okay. On the one hand, it has kind of like given a lot of people, regular people, right, a place to express themselves, to be themselves, to be creative and show their talents. And like, it's like there's so many talented people in the world that we like know about now that we probably never
Oh,
would otherwise without social media, right?
absolutely.
And on the other hand, it's also kind of given a platform or given the microphone to interesting people and groups of
Yes.
people who maybe normally would have stayed in the shadows, right?
Right.
Where they like maybe belonged. Okay. So yeah, social media is definitely a double-edged sword that way. But I think, I mean, I am a person who believes that no matter who we are, um, gender, color, religion, I mean, I don't care, right? Like you're a person, I'm a person, and we all deserve to have like equal access to everything, right?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. But I see on social media, there's a lot of people in the gay community that are very resentful of some of the folks that are very, very vocal about things like their pronouns and all that stuff. And it's all tied into sexuality. But again, if they only knew, like I really wish that they knew that nobody cares. Nobody really does. Nobody cares what sexuality you are. Nobody cares what you do in your bedroom. People just really, they're so myopic and focused on their own lives that the majority of people, I think, wish them well and say good luck to you, have a nice day, I have a life, I'm busy, I don't care about your pronouns, like that kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, this is an interesting topic because the vast majority of my friends kind of fall under the queer umbrella, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely something I'm very passionate about. But it's I'm trying to be like very polite about this.
Yeah,
Um,
no, go for
like
it.
I think that yes, like by and large, individual people, maybe they don't care, right? But there's definitely like still real harm that comes to
Let's talk
people.
about that. Let's break that down because what I mean, I live in my own world and I'm showed things on my algorithm that are designed for me, and you're shown
Yeah,
things that are designed for you. So that's unfair out of the gate because we should all get a mix of everything, but we don't.
sure.
So how? I mean, I know trans people are still suffering, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of discrimination against them. My
Mhm.
heart breaks for them.
Yeah,
They're victimized, brutalized. It's
absolutely.
disgraceful. Okay, it's disgraceful. Aside from, and that's just always been that. I mean, as far back as I can remember, that's just been. Um, and that's why they seek their own communities because they feel safe within them,
Absolutely.
and I don't blame them. But
Mhm.
how have other gay people been marginalized and disserviced? like in this day and age? How? Because I
Well,
never see it. I never see that, and I'm glad I don't. The people
yeah,
in
you
my
are.
world and my, yeah, the people in my world and my universe, I don't see that. I've got friends that are gay, have 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago that I knew. Nobody, like I said, that's why nobody cared. They were just us. They were
Mhm.
who we are, humans. So go
Mhm.
ahead. Let me let you answer that.
Well, so to your point, trans people in particular are disproportionately victims of violence, right? Compared
Absolutely.
to literally every other group that you could ever sample. Gay marriage, right? Marriage equality did not exist until, after the year 2000 in this country. There are many other countries, unfortunately, around the world where it is still not only illegal, but you can be killed, right, for being gay, like Russia being a great example of that, but not the only
Yeah.
one, right? And so, there are still people, unfortunately, today, they come out and they are completely like shunned, rejected, exiled,
Absolutely.
from their families. So even though I would argue that, we're sort of in the most progressive place that we have been socially, right, around these topics. um, all members of the LGBTQIA plus community, they still disproportionately, experience discrimination and violence that way.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was asking you that question, I was thinking about the United States because I like had just a brain lapse and forgot about the rest of the world and how they're so hated, and that's
Yeah,
disgraceful. I mean, that's
yeah,
disgraceful, and that's
yeah,
why there's so much, politically that goes on. We're not going to get into that, but there's so much that goes on that's just, I don't get. I just don't
yeah.
understand it. But I think it's important to have these conversations because when you look at us as spiritual beings, right? Our sexuality is a part of our spirit. It's a
Hmm.
part of procreation. It's how we exist. It's how we're here, right?
Hmm.
And it's sad to think that we still struggle with that. We hear about humanity going through this great awakening, but yet there's this big gaping hole in this world of sexuality, don't you think?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's still, and I don't like what is it, but there's still like so much stigma around this stuff, even though we do live in this like very, sort of modern age. The example I'm going to use is like how many people that kind of fall on the right side of the political spectrum end up having these secret accounts on like Grinder. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And it's like
Oh
these
my
men
God.
that are on like the down low. And what is that about? Like, like for me, I'm like, how can you go through life kind of like denying this sort of fundamental part of yourself? And then you have all this
Absolutely.
like internalized shame and, hate. And then they do usually end up like projecting it onto people and being violent towards, like it's just awful. So, I don't know what it's going to take. And like, part of me, I always, as cheesy as this is, I always think of this quote from Dita Von Teese. Okay.
Oh, I
She's like,
love her.
she's like, you could be the sweetest,
Yeah.
juiciest peach in the world, and there's still going to be somebody that hates peaches.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So,
That is
yeah.
so true. And Carrie says, I agree. The internet web has given us awareness to everything. It is a double-edged sword. It
Yeah.
really is.
Mhm.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And then let's see, Hillbilly Herb said, I think our humanity is moving from a duality-based reality, no longer black or white, ones or zeros, all possibilities in between. Yes.
I agree. I agree with that sentiment very much. There's a lot of studies and at some point in humanity, like everybody is going to be like a mixed race. You know what I mean? Like we're
Oh,
all going to kind of
yeah.
like look the same or almost be like indiscernible from one another that way. But I agree. I think when we get trapped in this kind of like binary extreme thinking, life doesn't really happen that way very often, right? Like life is often happening in these kind of like shades of gray, and there's hardly anything in life that's kind of like cut and dry like that, you
Yeah.
know?
Aubrey, do you think we're going to end up to be like just this androgynous race of people?
How far down the road are we talking here?
Well,
Right.
let's talk
But
100 years. For 100, that's a long time. I mean, think about how we've developed in technology just in 50
yeah.
years. So let's say 50 years from now, how do you see sexually the race at that point?
Well, my hope is that we continue to progress, right? Like we're at this very difficult point in history right now where we're seeing like the rise of like Christian nationalism, for
Yeah.
example, right, which is wanting to push the trad wife, trad husband, trad family, kind of thing, which is pushing us back, right? We're not progressing, we are regressing when we are doing that. And so, when I hear these, I think at a certain point in humanity that maybe we all kind of will have some kind of like, the different ethnicities of sort of like mingled enough together that maybe we all are some, kind of shade of brown. Like, sure, right? But as how far away that is, I cannot tell you, right? Like, when
Mhm.
I think about 50 years from now, it's like, no, I still think, we're having all of the different, ethnicities that are well defined and all of that. But yes, inevitably, as time is going on and more people, I mean, we live in such a globalized world, right? I mean, like you can connect with somebody across the planet instantly, right, in real time. And so, like, yes, do I think we'll move more towards that middle? Do I think we'll ever reach a place where we're like 100% in that middle? Probably not, right? Like, there will always be like little pockets of people that are like, no, we're whites only. I mean, like, you know what I mean? For better or worse, I obviously am not condoning that behavior, but I do think unless there is a significant change in people's racism and hate and whatever towards each other, I don't know if I ever see us fully being just like one.
You know what's interesting too? Like, we need to procreate to keep
Yeah.
our humanity alive.
Yeah.
And these women, that are are bitching about trad wives, traditional wives, they secretly want that. They want that macho man to procreate, and the guy wants this trad wife to stay home and raise the kids. And it's so interesting because if you look at technology is evolving into where I think eventually women won't even need to give birth anymore because of cloning and babies being developed in labs. And we've all seen the videos of how they can create a baby and nurture it in a faux lab, in a faux uterus, right?
Hmm.
So maybe we're headed towards this androgynous humanity where everybody will kind of look the same, be the same color. You won't be able to really differentiate sex, male from a female, because it'll be androgynous looking, right? The person, and then the babies will be developed in labs. I mean, who knows? It sounds like it's out of sci-fi, but and then what does that do to human sexuality? That was my point
Hmm.
to drop in your lap. Like, what happens to sex? Because sexuality is good. It keeps human
Absolutely.
beings on the planet, right?
Mhm.
So whoever you're attracted to shouldn't matter. Who
Well,
cares?
I agree with you. I mean, no,
Yeah,
I agree with you.
who
I think that's
cares?
like even from a young age, when people were, sort of vehemently against marriage equality and all these things, I was always just like, why do you care? Like,
Exactly.
why do you care so much about like who's doing who and like what behind closed doors in their bedroom, right? Like, that's never made any sense to me. But even thinking about this sort of like androgynous, like a future human race. People have
Yeah.
been doing it since the beginning of time, and I don't believe that we will ever come to a place, in humanity where we're not having sex. Like sex is the oldest,
Enjoyable. It's like
right?
one of the most pleasurable things other than eating that humans can experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sex is like the oldest industry in the whole world, right? Like
Yeah.
that and fishing are like the two oldest industries in humanity. And so, I would be hard pressed to, think that we would ever reach a place where people aren't connecting that way.
Yeah. Did like tantric sex and other cultures, spiritual traditions, teachings, philosophies, however you want to say it, did they influence your ideas when you were doing this research? I'm sure they must have, right?
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely approach it like purely through the astrological lens, right?
Mm.
And so that was really like, yeah, where I was coming from with that. Do all of those things interest me and fascinate me? Like, yes, of course. But they didn't have very much bearing on, how I was writing the book.
Oh, I see. So you like those concepts, but they didn't affect the astrological piece of your work, right?
Right, like the Tantra was written however long ago, it doesn't need to be sort of like rewritten or rehashed at this point. It's very famous. So yeah, and again, I think that was kind of like the hole that I saw, right, as well, was like, oh, astrology. And because I'm an astrologer, obviously that's like my expertise and what my background is in. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
like let's just do it purely through the astrological lens.
What do you think anger does? Let me rephrase this. Is there a spiritual danger in repressing sexual energy? What talk to us about that? What does that do to us spiritually?
Well, I think it affects us on multiple levels, right? Like anybody, well, okay, people who repress their sexuality, that's why we end up seeing like a lot of sexual deviance that comes out, right? If
Mm.
we're not having healthy avenues and safe avenues, right? Which falls under the umbrella of healthy, to express our sexual energy, then like, yeah, eventually it's going to come out sideways, right? Just like anything else, just like
Right.
anger, right? If we swallow our anger,
Absolutely.
eventually that's going to kind of come out sideways too and come out in an unhealthy way. So yeah, I mean, I think repressing that part of yourself again, which is such a natural fundamental part of who you are, no, it doesn't do good things to you energetically, right? It's not doing good things to you, certainly, energetically, spiritually, whatever. And it's just all going to come out sideways. And we can channel our erotic energy, yes, through like our creativity, the act of procreation, as you call it, right? That's the act of literal creation, right? So there's that kind of parallel that's happening around sexual energy. And there are plenty of other spiritual, religious beliefs that agree, right? Like the sacral chakras, where we like store our creativity and our sexual energy, right? So if that's the easiest way for you to think about it, right? If you're blocking your sacral chakra, yeah, that's affecting your life, right? Like that's affecting
Yeah.
you. You're not able to tap into that creative force within you. You're not able to tap into your emotions. And if we don't know, or we're not able to sort of openly express what we really desire, it's like all of that has to go somewhere, right? It all
Oh,
has to come out some way, somehow. And it's not going to be cute, right? Like
no.
the way that it comes out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we can look at, serial I don't wanna say the word for
Uh-huh.
censorship reasons, but
Mhm.
people that impose themselves on other people without permission, let's put it that way. That's like the epitome of sexual repression or sexual hatred. I mean, it's such a disconnect between their spiritual energy and their sexual energy, I guess,
Mhm.
is the best way to
Mhm.
put it. Do you think intimacy can occur without physical bodies?
Like on a spiritual level.
Yeah,
I
and
Yes.
have you experienced that personally and or know someone that has, like, and I
So,
ask because of social media again. So many
mm,
people are meeting over the internet, and
yeah.
there's, like, an immediate sexual connection
Mhm.
between a lot of these people, so what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that there are many different kinds of intimacy, first of all, right? Physical intimacy is just one of them. We obviously have emotional intimacy as well. But yeah, I definitely am somebody that believes that we have like psychic spiritual connections with other people. I also believe in past lives. And so, of
Mm.
course, I believe, we can connect with people who we were, in love with, involved with in past lives, in this life. And I mean, to your point, I feel like we see it time like there's a whole show called Love is Blind, right? And the whole like premise of that show is that they're like falling in love with each other without ever seeing one another,
I
right?
saw that. Yeah,
Before like
crazy.
being physically present with one another. And I think that's just one example that kind of shows like, yes, of course we can experience intimacy with people without having the physical presence or the physical connection with them. So, I mean, eventually I feel like we need to bring it together in person. But I realize that that doesn't always happen. And I don't think that it means that what you have with that person isn't real.
Oh, I so agree with that. I
Mm.
so agree with that. Do you think that, well, we kind of talked about where humanity is evolving towards, but do you think because of the way people are meeting nowadays through Zoom, through dating apps, that it's changing our sexual energy? Like, do you think it's affecting us spiritually?
That's an interesting question. Um, I think, okay, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, so you can tell me when I'm done.
Yeah.
But because there has been a commodification of people through things like dating apps, right? Where
Yeah.
you swipe and swipe and swipe, and you can match with somebody and be at their house, screwing them in 20 minutes, right? And then they get bored with you and move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
I actually think that that has done a great disservice,
Yeah.
to real human connection. And unfortunately, because it has created a dynamic, like I said, we're commodifying people here, right? They're like the next shiny new thing. And if I get bored with you, I can just, forget about you and move on to the next, the like fun, shiny new thing, right? And so unfortunately, what that has done is it has really affected people's ability to connect, right? There actually
Ah,
is no real intimacy, right, that's
big
being
time.
established because it's just this like instantaneous thing. And like, again, people have been having sex as long as we've been alive, right? As long as humans have walked this planet, and people have had casual sex that entire time too. So this is not to say that I think casual sex is wrong. I do not think that. Okay. However, I think at this point, especially that gamification almost, right, of like real human beings has been taken to this kind of extreme that's where the detriment comes in, right? There's no longer any like personal responsibility that people are having towards each other. Everyone's just kind of getting, used and tossed out and forgotten about. And now again, remember I'm talking about the pendulum swinging, right? So
Yeah,
now I'm seeing people start to push back on that, right?
good.
Women in particular, right? They're tired of being used and abused that way, and, not having any kind of consequence, personal
Yeah,
responsibility. And, that hurts people's feelings. Nobody wants to feel used, right? Nobody wants to feel like
and
they
it's
don't
going
matter.
both ways. You said that
Yeah.
beautifully. You
Yeah.
by the way, you
Thank you.
explained that beautifully,
Thank you.
and I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I feel very bad and hurt for both men and women who are
Mhm.
trying to find their soulmate, their partner, whatever, because it has turned into a nightmare, like you said, the
Mhm.
commodification of love and sex, and you're right, nobody wants to feel used and abused,
Yeah.
and that's what annoyed me. You said earlier that you were researching or watching sex workers
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
what motivate. And I feel like almost the worse for them because talk about
Oh, 100%.
commodification. Yeah. And then they're trying to legalize it and make it. And I think that's just going to make things worse for the whole thing. But and then you've got what's that platform called where everybody goes on there
OnlyFans.
and OnlyFans. Did you
Yeah,
ever
well,
think
well,
you'd see OnlyFans in your life?
I'm sorry.
Did you ever think you'd live to see a platform called OnlyFans where people are selling their sex online? I mean, I never did.
Well, I mean, it didn't surprise me, honestly, when something like that emerged, just because, like, porn, right? Like, people,
Yeah,
again, have been doing that
true,
forever.
true.
And actually, in the beginning, I don't know if okay, I'm going to come back to a point here in a minute, but
Yeah.
I actually like the idea of OnlyFans because, to your point about sex workers, right, who again disproportionately experience violence and all kinds of things,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Very dangerous to be a sex worker. I actually liked the idea of OnlyFans because I felt that it put the power back in the sex workers' hands, right? Where,
True,
like, they have the
true.
safety through the screen, right? Where they get to put out whatever content they want. People are, paying for it. They don't actually have to physically interact with anybody ever if they don't want to. You know what I mean? And so I actually felt that made that, much safer for people. However, what we are now seeing happen, I literally just saw a video about this earlier today with AI, is now there's these like OnlyFans models, right, that are being created through AI. And as AI is becoming increasingly more realistic, it's becoming more difficult to discern, is this a real person or is this
Oh, yeah.
AI? And so, I mean, we see there's already like AI influencers, right? Like across the social media platforms that will be the same thing on OnlyFans. We see people with like their AI girlfriends and boyfriends, and they're like leaving their spouses over their relationship with AI. I
Girl
mean,
marry an AI bot the other day. A Chinese girl. She was all over the news. She married her AI bot. She had the Google glasses on and the whole thing. And yeah. So do you still like the concept of OnlyFans or knowing
I
that?
well, I it makes it hard, right? Like for me, I am always gonna support the autonomy of a sex worker. Okay. So like if that is still working for you, you're still making money off of it, like great, of course I support that, right? However, sex workers, they're almost like the canary in the coal mine for a lot of things, right? And in this case, it's maybe like AI, right? And so like as these AI bots or however you want to describe them, right, are coming on and infiltrating the scene, and they're
Yeah.
this hyper idealized version of a person, right? Because they're fake.
Yeah.
I worry about how that will affect the ability of people who rely on that income, right, to continue to
Yeah. Yeah.
be able to do something like that.
Yeah. Let's see. Carrie said these dating apps promote instant gratification of showing the next available hookup just around the corner. It's more devastating in the end, and the human psyche is doing this. Yes, 100%.
I completely agree with that. Yes. I completely agree with that. So, now I'm seeing people, like I said, kind of pushing back on that, and people
Yeah.
who are, I sort of wonder if we'll have this mass exodus from dating apps where people are desiring to have more of that kind of analog, in-person connection, which I actually think is, probably for the best and probably healthier, because, the dating apps aren't doing it for people anymore. I don't like do I know people who have met their literal spouse on social media, or yeah, on social media, on dating apps? Like, yes, but they're the exception, right? They are not the rule.
And it's so worrisome because like back in the day, you'd go to a bar and meet people, you'd go to a concert and meet people. I mean, I guess concerts are still popular in a way to meet, a potential partner. But like when I was a teen I mean, I married at 18, 19, but for the average person, you can't, they don't go to bars anymore to meet.
Right.
Who does that?
Right.
Nobody, right?
Hmm.
So what option do they have? Like,
Well, you're you're asking the hard hitting questions here, Carol Ann, because that's what people ask me all the time, right?
yeah,
They're like, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to meet somebody if it's not
um,
through a dating app, right? And I appreciate, that is a real struggle. I mean, I think it's so hard as adults, to if you're not in school or you don't work in an environment where there's a lot of people around that are like around your age and the gender you prefer to date, like, yeah, it's really hard,
Especially
and it's like,
people are working at home,
right.
this, and especially after COVID, that had to transform and change the whole dating thing
No,
too.
guaranteed.
People,
Yes, guaranteed.
yeah, they probably didn't even want to date during COVID. I bet you there was a lot of celibacy going on.
Yeah, it probably was. Honestly, it probably was. I know that actually during quarantine, the dating apps got like a huge boost because everyone was bored at
Oh yeah,
home. You know what I mean? But
right.
especially when we weren't allowed to leave our houses, it was like you basically just had a pen pal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is hard. But I call me old fashioned, okay? But at least like in my own life, I would very much still prefer the organic way
Yeah,
of meeting
absolutely,
somebody.
absolutely. So, are
Mhm.
you personally have you been on a mission to develop your spiritual growth over the course of your years? Like, is
Oh
that
yeah.
something that's important to you? It is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Obviously.
absolutely. Mhm.
So, because I never made the connection between the two things,
Mm.
the sexual energy and the spiritual energy, but they really are one and the same. I mean,
Mhm.
look at how your chakras line up too. And, you're, to me, like your grounding chakra is a very sexual
Absolutely.
chakra,
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Mhm.
So, for those of us, because I'm always, like I wake up every day and I just thank God that I'm here first and foremost. But I'm always looking to develop my consciousness and my spiritual energy. And I'm always doing things to do that. And I never really connected my sexual energy
Mm.
in that. Do you find that's common that people kind of, why? Like, why are we forgetting about one of the most important things about us as humans?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold, right? Like, I think on one part of it is again that there's still this taboo, right? There's still all this like weird shame and stigma around sex, even though I don't know why at this point, right? But like there
Yeah.
still is. Like even trying to like promote my book that has the word sex in it. I mean, like that's
Right.
still a word that's largely censored on social media, right? It's still a topic that makes people uncomfortable. I have people that follow me for that content, and I have people who have unfollowed me, right, for that content.
Absolutely.
So it's just,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just for some reason, God, I don't know why it drives me crazy, but it's still this like shame and stigma. And then I think the other part of it, which is something I love that you asked this question. I think the other part of it is a lot of times when we see people who are on this spiritual path, especially if they're falling in this kind of like, I don't know if new age is the right way to say it, but like alternative
Yeah.
spirituality branches, right? I think we see a lot of like escapism that happens through that, where people kind of become obsessed with like the spirit world or these other dimensions or whatever. And there's nothing like, please, okay, explore those things, figure it out, whatever. But we forget, I think, a lot that like no matter how connected we may be to like the other world, we're still humans in this life, like, living out a real life, and we need to be in our bodies, right? Like
God,
we
yeah.
have to be in our bodies. And we also live in a time with like all the screens and social media that we've been talking about. There's all the perpetual distractions, right? So
Oh,
there's all these things that are constantly pulling us out of our bodies. And for you to really own your true essence and your sexuality and vitality, guess what? You need to be in your body.
abso-freaking-lutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Hi, Emily, by the way. She said, agreed with the organic way of meeting. And I've spent plenty of time in the past on dating apps. And I wonder if she's a Gen Z or I'm not quite sure, but I, I feel, I feel so hurt
Mm,
for the younger generation
yeah.
because I don't know how in God's name, and I see a lot of videos like on Instagram and whatnot, and there's so many unhappy women.
Yeah.
they're all like, where can I meet people? I mean, I see them every day, the videos, and it's heartbreaking. It goes beyond sex, even. I don't
Yeah,
even think
sure.
they're thinking about sex. They just want the connection. And then the sex comes
Mhm,
after that. You
mhm.
typically, I mean, you have to connect with someone, of course, first, right?
Yeah,
It's just so sad. And that's where I think a lot of this social media hurt the younger
I agree.
generations.
No,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you that way. Yeah, it's complicated, right? Like I
Yeah.
personally have a very complex relationship with social media, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Emily, hi babe, love you. So yeah, I mean, I do. I have a complicated relationship with social media because I think if it was up to me, I would not be on social media at this point. Like, I think I would just delete all of my apps and like
I
my accounts, and I would just be like in real life. However, I have also been afforded so many opportunities in my career because of social media, right? Like
exactly.
this is happening right now, right? On social
Absolutely.
media. And it's happening because of Llewellyn, which is an opportunity that I got because of my following that I built online. You know what I mean?
And
So it's like, yeah.
it's all cyclical and circular and full of synchronicities. That's
Mm,
exactly what it is. And someone mentioned a dual-edged sword before in the comments. Sorry, I forget. It might have been Hillbilly. I'm not sure. But that is so true. And I think we have to use discernment all the time.
I agree.
Use your discernment.
Hmm.
If you want to do OnlyFans, go for it. Use your discernment all the time. And I think, balance, right, Aubrey? I love
Yeah.
your name, by the way.
Thank you.
You have a great name. You don't hear it often. It's really, really unique and pretty. So yeah, there's so many struggles, societal struggles. And I think we need to change the energy too that religion has shaped around sexuality, because that's really a bad. I mean, it starts with the Puritans,
Yeah.
hundreds of years ago, right?
Mhm.
And I think it has become so toxic, especially when you've got, like, I grew up in Catholic religion,
Me too.
and yeah, not the good ones. I was beaten by nuns and it
Oh
was just
no.
horrible.
Oh no. Yeah. My mom, same
You're,
thing. She went to
yeah,
Catholic
you're
school,
too young.
got her ass. But yeah.
I got my ass handed to me on a daily basis by them. But and then you look at things like what the Catholic Church hid, the corruption, the perversion
Right.
with the priests and the whole thing. So how do you think we can attack that monster?
Actually, I love that you brought that up because remember when you asked me earlier about like what happens when we're kind of like denying that sexual side of ourselves? The priests, unfortunately, are a great example of this,
They
right?
are.
They make, take this oath of celibacy.
Yeah.
But there is like the church and whatever tells them like, bro, you can't even masturbate, right? So there's no like release. There's just like a complete denial and repression of that side of themselves. And then unfortunately, there's like this rampant problem with them sexually abusing altar boys, and
Absolutely.
like, so it's like that is a real tangible example of what happens when we are not allowed to have that outlet. Right. So, there we could talk about religion and Catholicism all night.
Yeah.
But there is something, I have said for years that I think the Catholic Church needs to be modernized.
Oh
Um,
my word.
like in a bad way, okay? I really loved our last pope. I have high hopes for our current pope, Pope Leo. And we'll see. But
Yeah.
at some point, the Catholic Church needs to sit down and like address the real harm, right, that has been caused. And I don't know at what point they kind of look at themselves and be like, okay, maybe we need to let the priest like date or marry or like whatever, because it's yeah.
That is so spot on. I've been waiting for the church to let the poor priests and nuns get married for decades, and they
Yeah.
have not quite evolved to that point yet. I don't know what
Yeah.
in God's name literally they're waiting for. I
I
think that would stop a
yeah.
lot of the perversion and
I
twisted sick
agree with
crap.
you. I definitely agree with you. And it's so interesting to me because there's so many other Christian sects where the preacher, whatever title they slap on it, okay, the leader of the church is allowed to be married and have children, right? And like Catholics are kind of like the only ones left, even rabbis, right? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like they're kind of like they're not the only religion that like you're not allowed to do that, but they're the only kind of Christian religion, I believe, where they're not allowed to, do
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, why do you think now is a good time, the right time to start having more of these conversations? Because you take people in their 50s and 60s, and they're a lot more open than a lot of people might think. Like, I'm very in touch with my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been my whole life. I never looked at it as secretive or dirty or any, and I raised both
Same.
of my kids that
Yeah.
way.
That's
So
good.
why do
That is so good.
yeah, now my kids are and my daughter, it's funny, she's such a reflection of that it makes my heart beam with joy because my
Oh,
kids, as I wasn't raised racist, I wasn't raised sexually repressed, none of that. The worst thing that happened to me was Catholic school, but my parents thought they were doing a good thing, so it's not
yeah.
really their fault. It's not really their fault. But why do you think now is, oh, Liebercast, so good to see you. Bonjour, bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Um,
Cuckoo, cuckoo. um,
I interviewed him on the channel once, and I'm itching to have him back. I will be emailing you. It was such a
Perfect.
fascinating conversation. Loved it. But anyway, I digress. Why do you think now it's so important to have these types of conversations? How many of them have you been having? A lot, a little, not enough?
Well, I feel like it's something I talk to people about all the time. One of my like pipe dreams that I have for myself is if I ever became like really rich, I would implement comprehensive sexual education into public schools. Because that's what we should do. But I think it's a conversation that's overdue. Right. Like I think it's a conversation that we should have been having for a long time now. But I think also kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier, as there's all these kind of new like gender expressions and sexualities that are emerging. I mean, we need to talk about it, right? Like we need to,
Absolutely.
again, kind of like destigmatize things, let those like open and honest conversations start happening because it's the only way that we can like education is power, right? Like education is power. And so like the more we can talk about it, the more people who can become educated around it and even start just taking steps towards understanding. I mean, like that's real progress, right? Instead of like rejecting something out of the gate and being like, nope, I don't know what that is. I don't care. I don't want to learn about it. Like we're doing ourselves a disservice through that, right?
Yeah.
So I think anything, I don't care if it's sex or something else, anything where it is like stigmatized and shame, literally anything that carries shame and becomes like a secret, right? Like nothing good is coming of that.
Mm,
And like,
agreed.
especially also where we live in this like hyper hookup, instant gratification
Yeah.
culture, more people are having sex all the time. And we're starting to see the emergence of things like antibiotic resistant gonorrhea, right?
Oh,
Because people are not practicing safe sex. Because again, there's this weird, awkward conversation. Like people feel, I don't know, awkward and they're uneducated about it and stuff. But again, if we learn about it and we like learn how to start having these conversations,
yeah.
those
Well,
things are
Aubrey,
going
look
to,
at what AIDS did to the
right.
sex. I mean, that was just absolutely tragic
Yes.
beyond words. So,
Yes.
you're exactly right. I mean, people, and at the same time, there needs to be an age cap where we could start talking to these kids about these
Mhm.
things. Like, I don't want to take a kid, who's 6 and start dumping all this stuff. There's
No, for
got to be
sure.
an agreement on
Yes.
I have a granddaughter who's 8,
Yeah.
and at that age, I think I would slowly start to implement those types of conversations, like 8, 9, like,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
start educating in school. There's
Yeah.
gotta be there's gotta be a limit to the age where we talk to kids about this.
Well, I agree with you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and to your point, it's an ongoing conversation, right? Because
Right.
as people develop and get older, there's more like age appropriate things that we can start to discuss with them, right? Versus like, the conversation you're going to have with a newly sexually active teenager versus your 8-year-old granddaughter, like those are not you know what I mean? Absolutely.
Exactly.
But like I remember being in middle school, I remember being in 8th grade and having, the health class, and
Yeah.
they showed us a slideshow of like people, genitals that are infected with STIs that clearly, I now know have been left untreated for far too long. But there
That's
was
right.
no conversation around like, these are the symptoms. Here's how you protect yourself. Here's how you talk to somebody. Here's how you get tested. It was just this like fear tactic of like, here's all these really scary photos to try to like scare us into celibacy. That obviously, like teenagers have sex. Okay. Like they start experimenting with that stuff. And to think that celibacy is the right approach. No,
Yeah.
because then you're ending up with teenagers that don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to be safe. They don't feel like
Yeah.
they can come talk to you about it. So,
Yeah.
like, again, nothing good, right?
Yeah,
And
those
that ignorance
contracts.
bleeds. I'm
Remember
sorry.
the contracts they were signing, the kids in, like, high schools? They were
Yes.
signing these celibacy contracts with that. I
Yes.
said, "No good is gonna come of that."
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. So I think there's real education that needs to happen at school, but there's also education that needs to happen at home too, right? Like,
So one of the things I loved about your book, if you don't mind, can I show a chart from your book?
yeah, of course.
Okay, so, like, I think at the end of each chapter, you have these, right?
Mhm.
Different ones, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm a visual learner too, and that's why I really appreciate them. I like them. So what were you hoping or what do you hope people get from your book and get from, like, this one says the sun points to our erogenous identity. It is what we feel and see in our own sexuality and how we show up and embody it. I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. And then you have each sign, and then you have this adjective, I guess, that describes the person's what, how they embody their
Yeah, they're just
identity.
keywords, right? They're just keywords around that. So this is for the sun, right? So you'd be like, oh, I'm a
Right.
Pisces sun. What do the keywords for that say? Oh, I'm a Libra sun. So what do the keywords for that say? Right. So the whole point of the book is to like know yourself better in this way, right? To kind of go on that like inner exploration around like, yeah, how am I showing up around my sexual energy? How am I showing up in my various degrees of romantic and sexual relationships, and then ideally you can also turn around when you have a partner and be like, hey, like
Right, yeah,
what's your chart and how can we come
absolutely.
together and kind of like decode each other this way, if you
And I
will.
really like that. And I was looking at, like, of course, my sign and all of the keywords, and I wrote a few of them down because they hit home. They really did.
Good.
They just described to me very well. So the Libra cast says sexuality is a part of life. It is spiritual, physical, and psychological in nature. Younglings need to be educated about reproduction without a doubt. Absolutely, they do. And as we were saying, if you make it a gradual over time thing, they can absorb it and process it, not be afraid of it, not be repressed by it.
Mhm.
So I think there's all of that. So what are you, somebody reads your book or somebody wants to buy, and I always like to tout authors when their books, because a lot of work goes into it. And like I said, I read it and I loved it, and I have the PDF copy, so for me it's great because I could just highlight on screen and do all that fun stuff. But what do you want them to get out of your book? Like, what's your hope, your aspiration?
Mhm. Yeah, I think just kind of reiterating what I said earlier, right? Like my hope is that they well, my hope is that they feel seen, right? My hope is that they're like, yeah, like, yes, this is me, you're right, and that they feel, again, like they kind of have like the language and the tools that they need to then be able to be honest, right? To own what they really want, need, and desire, and that they can move forward in their romantic and sexual connections with others and be like, hey, I know myself in this way, right? This is what I want. This is what I need. This is what I think is hot. This is what I think is not. And like, how can we, are we a good match? Right? Because then if somebody's like, oh, I want the exact opposite of that, like you're not going to waste each other's time. Right? And you'll be able to have more honest conversations and more fulfilling connections.
What do you think surprised you the most when you were writing this book? Did you discover anything that made you go, wow, like have an epiphany?
I think the most interesting thing for me when I was writing this book is how uncomfortable I still felt
Oh,
talking about those
wow.
things. Yeah, because
That's a big one, Aubrey. That's a big one.
yeah. So it's very surprising to me, I have to say, because even though I feel comfortable and have always kind of felt comfortable and, my sexual nature and all of that, I'm not somebody who speaks about sex like openly. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't go to my friends and kiss and tell. This is a Scorpio Venus in me. Okay. I'm very private, right, about that area of my life. And while I will obviously talk to my partner about those things, I'm not turning around to my friends and being like, oh, blah, 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 and like my girlfriends will come talk to me about it, but like I'm not talking to anybody except for my partner, right? About like, what it is that I'm doing or thinking or, whatever around that. So it really pushed me in that way, right? To have to be able to talk about those things and to try to do it. I was so intentional with the language in this book. It's like I didn't want it to be this like super like raunchy graphic thing that would push people away, right? I wanted, again, the accessibility piece was really kind of the most important part to me. Not that there's anything wrong with graphic and raunchy, okay, but that was just not what I wanted this book to be. And so it's very much a journey for me around like, how do I talk about these things? And so yeah, that was definitely the most surprising part for me.
That's good. That sounds like a big way to evolve your own self. So it almost
100%.
seems like it was destined for you to like explore this topic, right? And go through this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely like an initiation. I will agree with that.
Yeah. What do you have lined up next? Do you have another book coming out or one
I
you
do.
hope, right?
Yes, I do. So I am in the process actually right now of finishing up the edits on my manuscript for an astrocartography book.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so that is also going to be published by our pal Llewellyn, and that will come out in like the springtime of 2027. I don't have like an actual release date for it yet, just because of where we are in the publishing process. But yeah, so that's my next one.
So exciting! And how can folks reach out to you if they want to have a reading done or have their chart done? How do they get you, girl?
I appreciate this question. So obviously the Instagram is scrolling across the bottom. I'm also on Threads under the same username, and both of those have links in the like bio that will take you to my website where you can book with me, or you could go to my actual website, which is www.graveyardroses.com. All spelled normally.
I was on there.
Yeah. So that's my Scorpio Venus website name, Graveyard Roses.
Yeah, I'm going to share it because I went on there. Of course, I was poking around. Let me go add to stage. Oh, wait, stop screen. Share screen. Here we go. So this is your website. And let me just, so you can purchase the book right there, obviously, or get it on Amazon. And you can read all about, she's got some articles and things on here. you can check her out and schedule a reading right here too, right?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to have you back when you publish your other book.
Ooh, I would love to.
Um,
It would be my pleasure.
definitely. And if you want, you can, you can come back and we can just talk about, what is it? Auto cryptography? No, what is it called?
Astrocartography. Yeah, we can totally do that.
Yeah.
It would be my pleasure. Seriously. Yeah.
Oh, I'd
So.
love to do that because I've never heard of it until I read your bio. I'm like, what
Oh.
is that? I never heard of it.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah. No, so fun. If you send me ahead of time the information to pull your chart, we can just pull up your map and like go through it while we're doing
Fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I will reach out to you via email and we could schedule a date.
Perfect. I love it. I look forward to it.
Aubrey, thank you. You are such a joy. I
You're so
love your
sweet.
spirit energy. You're so full of great wisdom and knowledge. I love that you wrote this book, and I wish you so many successes with it because they're so well deserved.
Thank you so much. You're so kind. I've really enjoyed connecting with you on here. I look forward to connecting with you again. I know you have a hot date tonight, so it's time to go. But I hope you have fun on your date.
Thank you. Yeah, and I did meet my boyfriend on a dating app, which my sister forced me. She forced me to.
It happens, but it does. It happens.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing. Because most folks know that my husband in the chat, that my husband passed away 4 years ago. And I was so resistant. But where are you going to meet people? I'm not going to meet them working in my office here. It ain't going to happen. So thankfully, my sister pushed me to do it and turned out to be a great guy. So I got lucky.
That's so good. I'm so glad. What is his sign?
Aries.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very different from your Pisces.
Yes, very different. And my husband was a Pisces. So the two of us were like, but we lasted 45 years. So it must have been kismet. It was just meant to be, but he's in the heavens now. So.
Well, he would, I have this feeling that like he would want you to kind of get back out there and find love.
You're spot on. Because when he first got sick, he would tell me all the time, listen, he'd go, Carol Ann, you better go find yourself a boyfriend because you're not the type of girl that's going to be alone. Because he knew me so well.
Yes, absolutely.
So interesting. But
that's funny. I was actually going to ask if he was sick, if he got sick and that was why he passed.
Yeah, it was a combination of, I'm going to use two words, vent and remdesivir during COVID. So it was one of those things that, an unfortunate twist of fate. But, when the universe wants you, when God wants you, there ain't nothing going to stop that from happening. When God decides to take us off this planet, however we go, it's destined to be. There are no mistakes. So
yeah,
that's 100%. How I try to look at it. I mean, how else can, thank you. Thank you so much, Hillbilly. We love having you guys in the chat. We love you guys in the chat. And yes, Aubrey, I will be reaching out to you. We will schedule another date. I'm excited to talk about a topic I know nothing about. So I'm going to have to do some research. You might have to help me.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely will. I absolutely will. Like I said, we can just do like a full reading on here. It'll be the best.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. And you can use it as like a precursor to your book sales too. When your book's ready.
Perfect. I like where your head's at.
I'll see you soon, dear. God bless. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, she's an absolute joy. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about being part of United Public Radio Network, meeting people like Aubrey. It's so interesting to me how you can connect with someone spiritually through a video platform, but it does happen. Her energy is magical and her book is magical, and I highly recommend it. So tonight we talked and opened up a door that many people kind of feel weird about. They don't feel comfortable walking through. But the conversation wasn't only about sexuality. It was about our spirituality, because those two things are not divorced from each other. And I hope that this helped clarify for people listening out there, that it's all sacred and it's all beautiful. And we love the human race and we want them to thrive and prosper. So, big shout out to Aubrey for clearing up so much of this and demythifying this topic. And you'll see her again. I can definitely promise you. Typically, we have a 2-hour show, but I have a dinner date. So I'm going to go. Love you all. I will see you tomorrow. Do not forget, please, I have a 3 p.m. show that's going to be as magical as the one today. Well, maybe. We'll see. But the topic is Witchcraft Decoded, 13 keys and secrets that you will change how you see witchcraft. Maybe. Everything is a big maybe, right? I'd like to get the word maybe tattooed on my arm because everything is just maybe. Anyway, love you guys. I will see you tomorrow at 3. Bye-bye.